Surprise, we're back doing the blog thing again, here with a new post. This post is available in both written and video form, so the link to that is below. As of this post, I am migrating my written version to Substack, so you can subscribe to the Substack, this channel, both, anything to be kept in the loop for future and unpredictably timed videos. If you're new, or it's just been so long that you forgot who I am, which is entirely fair, I'm Brianna, I write books. This is Beau, he does not write books. I want to talk about giving up. And it's something that comes up at multiple points in a writer's journey, and it's pretty much always presented with a negative connotation. The thing is, I don't think it's the worst thing ever. The idea of constantly pushing yourself and never giving up can be really harmful too. And so I want to share some experiences of my own, one from non-writing life and one from writing, and kind of talk a little bit about how the notion of giving up shaped those. So I, at this point, like to think of this concept of giving up as choosing something else. Choosing yourself, choosing new opportunities, choosing to use your time more efficiently or more happily. I don't talk about it a lot in my writing spaces, but I have a PhD in human genetics. I was 10 years old when I decided to get a PhD in genetics, and I pursued it single-mindedly for the next 10 years. When I was 20, I moved 2,000 miles across the country and I started a PhD program. The dream was finally happening. The way my program was set up was in the first year, each student rotated through 3 different research labs and then decided which one to work with for the rest of their time in the program. So I did that. I found a lab that I absolutely loved, doing work that I found interesting with people I enjoyed and respected. But at the end of my rotation year, that lab didn't have funding to keep me on permanently. And neither did the other 2 labs I'd worked in. So I had to scramble. At that point, I had about 3 weeks, and if I didn't find a lab to take me by then, I wouldn't be able to continue in the program and I would have to drop out. This is the point in the story where we come back to the topic of giving up. I had the option then to give up on this dream that I'd spent half my life working towards. And I didn't. I found a lab, not really caring exactly what they did because they had enough money to fund me to continue. And then I started 5 years of being miserable and diminished and driving myself into the ground for the dream of a 10-year-old who didn't know this is what it would be like. So I don't regret it. I don't like to say that I regret things because I am happy with where my life is now and who I am now, and all of that is shaped by both the good and bad experiences in my life. But somewhere out there in a parallel universe, there is an alternate version of me who chose to stop, chose to find one of any number of things that would have made me happy, and chose to find a new dream, because that's what it would have been. So giving up, yes, but choosing something too. And it took me years to recover from my grad school experience. And while I used to write all the time, that decision to not give up on grad school kicked off 10 years of me not writing. I don't intend to live my life in tidy 10-year intervals. It just happens. I definitely thought about writing though. Like, I remembered how much I loved it. I had characters with stories to tell, creating themselves in my head, but I didn't write. I just couldn't. When I finally started writing again, it was one of those characters that I had carried around for all that time. Her name was Adelaide, and at last I wrote her story. She's a grifter in space among the last remnants of humanity trying to save the life of a woman she conned. 10 years of writing dreams poured out in a torrent. I wrote my first draft, which is about 105,000 words, in 23 days. Adelaide's story was the book of my heart. It meant so, so much to me. It wasn't just a book, it was the book, the one that brought me back. It made me fall in love with writing again. And it was a story that had waited patiently for years until I was able to write it. And also, I thought I only had that one story in me, and I'd finally gotten it out. So less than a year later, I decided I wanted to be published, and I began querying Adelaide. And then I broke my own heart. Rejections piled up. Nobody wanted this story that I loved more than anything, and I was making myself miserable. I started to hate the idea of writing, which honestly was worse than the period of not being able to write. Like, I could do it, I just didn't want to anymore. So now we're back to the topic. Once again, I had built this dream for myself, and I could either keep at it or give up. And so I made a different choice this time. I did give up. I chose my own mental health. I chose my ability to keep writing and to love doing so. I had my Adelaide manuscript printed and bound and put on my bookshelf, and then I closed the door. I spent most of that querying time on my own without a real community, but I know now, and I see this in other people's posts, if I asked online, should I keep going after having sent 25 queries, I would have gotten dozens of people telling me to keep going, you have to keep trying, 25 is nothing, don't give up. And that sentiment is pervasive in the writing community, and I understand why. It's a challenge to get published, it's a challenge to write, and it is important to keep going when you can. But for me, those 25 queries weren't nothing. They were 25 rejections of my dream, of the story of my heart, and I was bleeding out. And so just like I had when I was 10, I'd created this dream for myself without realizing that this is what it would be like. My choice to stop is what allowed me to keep writing. It allowed me to find more characters that I love so much, to dream up new stories for them. It allowed me to write a silly little book about karaoke and killers, one that I love deeply, but doesn't feel quite the same as Adelaide. So I was able to query that book without my heart bleeding out. And it meant that 2 years after giving up, I was able to send my book to an amazing agent who fell in love with it. And I'm looking forward to getting to share more exciting news eventually about that book, which I never would have written if I hadn't given up. So that's all I've got for you today. If you have your own stories of giving up or of choosing something for yourself, I would love to hear them. Bo and I will be back for another post in the future in some undetermined amount of time. But if you want to know when that happens, again, subscribe here and or subscribe on the new Substack. So he's already sleeping.